Yeah, we are going to be playing some Division 2 with Folden here and talking about living with depression. Something both Folden and I have lived with for probably quite a while now. I know I've lived with it for a few years, and I know you've struggled with it some as well. Um, but they've heard me talk a lot, so let's start with you. What are some of the ways that you live with depression and kind of move past not just feeling the depression, but being able to function around it?
Well, honestly, I don't live with it a lot. It's been something for me that's been recent, just with some difficulties in life, and
Mm-hmm.
it's more of like loss and the depression that comes along with that. I do know people such as yourself that have dealt with it before. Uh, I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm a person. I'm currently studying basically human development, which is essentially like psychology and sociology. And one of the initial tenets that they tell you is everybody struggles just on a little bit
Mm-hmm.
that we've covered under depression. They tell you that everybody struggles with it from time to time. So it's as uncommon as you think it is. It's a lot of it is biochemical, or a lot of it is
Mm-hmm.
chemical changes in the brain. There are biological aspects to it, but there in
Mm-hmm.
addition, there can be emotional aspects, stressful situations, loss of a
Mm-hmm.
loved one.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, there are a lot of forms. I have been diagnosed with clinical depression. That's something I'm going to live with for the rest of my life. Some of it's a chemical imbalance, so I do take medication for it. But there are definitely all sorts of types of depression. Like yours is more of a situational depression. It sounds like we have seasonal depression. I mean, there's any number of types of depression, and they all have their own unique sort of struggles to live with. But at the end of the day, the important thing is to realize that no matter how difficult and hard things can get, um, you're not alone in that struggle. And I think that's one thing that depression does to us a lot, whether it's like me with clinical depression or more of a situational or depression like with yours with a loss. It likes to tell us that nobody else understands how you're feeling. It likes to make us feel alone.
well, in addition to that, I think there's also the notion that it's hard to ask for help. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
me going through what I'm currently going through, it was very difficult for me to realize that I needed someone to help me, that
Mm-hmm.
I could not do it on my own. And I had tried for quite a while,
Mm-hmm.
but what I was doing wasn't working. And in fact, I was getting worse in the process. So it's one of the biggest struggles that I find, at least in terms of myself, is just that notion of accepting that maybe you can't get through it. Maybe you need someone there who knows
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing, who understand some of the processes and some of the ways to treat it, rather than just writing you a prescription and then you spend the rest of your days just medicating yourself, which I
Absolutely.
personally am not a fan of. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
medication has its benefits, but if you're going to fix something, you need to fix the cause of it and learn how to
Absolutely.
deal with it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I struggle with that a lot too. Actually, it took me years to finally accept that I needed to see one, and a pretty disastrous relationship on top of that. No, it because I had this fear, and I'm going to share this a little bit. I had this fear for a long time that medication, especially, they were just going to throw drugs at me. They were just going to numb me. That was always the fear that I wasn't going to feel anymore. And after I finally got that help, once I finally went and started seeing a psychiatrist and got on the medication that I needed, I realized it's not about numbing you. It's about, for me at least, it was about getting those extreme highs and those extreme lows that were just exhausting. And all that medication does is kind of level those out a little bit. So you still feel the highs and you still feel the lows, but they're manageable. So definitely getting help is probably the biggest step, even above anything else, even above just talking about it. I think talking about it is great. Admitting that you're struggling with it, whether that's in a situation like this, just with friends or wherever. I think the biggest step that anyone can do, regardless of where the depression is coming from, whether it's clinical or seasonal or situational, uh, getting help from someone who knows what they're doing is a huge step.
I think beyond that, it's getting the right help. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's finding people that know what they're doing and can give you the type of help that you need, rather than
Absolutely.
sedating you or just,
Mm-hmm.
for me personally, I want to talk to someone that can give me tips on how to deal with my stress
Mm-hmm.
and move. I mean, the grief itself is. I've experienced this before. I understand what this part of depression is. For me, it's more of a stress and a burnout, and things of that nature, but that can contribute to depression.
Absolutely.
And it can make minor feelings turn into major ones.
Absolutely.
And so you want to make sure that if you go to find help, you go to someone who knows how to help you, not just for lack of being sounding insensitive, someone who's just going to take your money.
Absolutely.
You want to find someone who can teach you to look at things the way that you're unable to do so yourself.
Exactly. And I think there are multiple aspects. It's definitely seeking professional help is the number one thing to do. I mean, but it's also important. One of the things that I lacked for a long time was support. And some of that was on me. It like you said, it can be really hard to talk about it. Just even in almost especially with family and friends, because you care more about their opinions than you would necessarily a counselor or someone that you just met. And
and I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I think another thing to remember is not everybody's going to understand. There'll be people that can't grasp the concept of mental health issue. You know, you can wake up in the morning and feel like there's something sitting on your chest as you get out of bed, and you can't tell what it is. And you've gone to the doctor, and you've gone through every test and every diagnosis, and you still don't know what's wrong with you. Well, that can be a sign of depression. That may be caused by stress. That may be caused by, in my instance, burnout. But it still means your brain is trying to tell you something.
Absolutely. And this is, again, just I can only draw from my own experiences because, like I've said, and Foldenfly will say this too, neither of us are professionals. Neither of us is a counselor. So if you are seriously struggling with something, we both encourage you to get the help that you need.